Hey everybody, Zee Garcia here, and today I'm taking a look at a two-player post-apocalyptic game, Kero. In Kero, which I assume is pronounced Kero because it comes from kerosene, I guess you could say Kero also, but anyway, in this game, there are going to be two players, both of them fighting over locations in this post-apocalyptic wasteland, as well as resources in order to gather specific cards on the table. You are going to be acquiring these resources by rolling dice in a real-time mechanism. You see, you have a truck filled with fuel. This truck is basically a large sand timer. And you are going to, when it's your turn to roll the dice, turn that truck and start rolling your dice, burning through your fuel, if you would, until you're ready to stop, and you turn that sand timer on its side so that your fuel stops burning, and then you can use the dice to acquire different things. That's all there is to it. You need to manage refueling. You need to manage what you are fighting over with your opponent. Let me give you a look at how it all works together a little bit more in depth. We'll come on back after that. I'll tell you what I think of it. In the game, the players are going to be rolling dice in order to generate resources and therefore acquire these cards up here and deploy their helpers here to control locations. At the end of the game, you're going to get victory points based on the cards and the locations you control. Most points is, of course, the winner of the game. So each round goes like this. The first thing you're going to do is you may refuel your truck. And I'll come back to that in just 1 second. Once that's done, you can spend fuel tanks if you want to buy extra dice past these 5 white dice. And they're right here, these 3. You can spend 1 jerry can here to add 1 of these dice. You can spend 2 to add 2, however you want to. Once that's done, then you get to the meat of the game, which is a real-time dice rolling element to the game. Let's say I'm just going to go with these 5 dice. I'm not going to spend the jerry cans for any extras. So, once I'm ready, I'm going to go ahead and turn my truck over on its end, and the sand timer, which is this massive sand timer in here, is going to start running, and I'm going to start rolling my dice looking for specific combinations. The combinations I need are here across the bottoms of the cards. I can also get a combination of specific faces to deploy my people out there. So here I go. I'm going to do that. I'm going to roll this. I'm going to go ahead and keep 2 brick, and I'm going to re-roll the rest. This is all, again, in real time. If I roll a flame, I have to keep it. And I'm going to stop. Once I stop, I turn my truck back down so the sand stops running. And then I'm going to resolve what I rolled. So, if I rolled any combination that I can use towards a card, I can do that. So these 3 brick resources allow me to get either this card or this card here. This one gives me a permanent token, which is set aside at the beginning. And I could take this token here, just set it over on this side there to remind me I have a permanent power. In this case, it means that I can use the food resource there to convert that into fuel. But I'm not going to take that one. Instead, I'm going to take this card with my 3 brick. And this is an endgame scoring card. The more of these kinds I have, the more points I'm going to get. I take that, I put it over here in my card section. And then if I have at least 2 of the fire tokens right here, it burns the last card and everything's going to be replenished. Okay, so everything will get pushed over, goes back to my opponent, we refill the track, and they have their go, in which they may refuel, then they'll take their turn, adding some dice if they want to, deploying some characters, things like that. Now if I roll metal and 1 of these helpers on the dice, then I can use that to deploy 1 of these to a location. And these are going to be resolved when a specific card comes up in the deck that tells me to do it. There are 3 of them. They're shuffled into a third of the deck, and then those thirds are stacked. And when 1 of those comes up, then we are going to resolve the locations. They look kind of like that. Whoever controls a location, meaning they have more characters there than their opponent, is going to get that location. They have victory points, sometimes a further victory points based on a condition, and sometimes they'll even give you some special abilities or items that are displayed right on the location, such as this one is 2 victory points, but you also get 4 jerry cans when you control that location. And then once that's done, these 4 locations will go out to the players. If one of them is not earned because no one went there or there's a tie, we simply remove it and you play out 4 new locations. You take all your characters and you place them back over here. And you continue playing. This happens 3 times in the game, and then the game is going to be over. Besides all of that, you can, there's a couple of other things, let me talk about those. You can refuel at the beginning of your turn. It's right here, and when you refuel, you can do it for 1 jerry can, gives you 1 refueling action. You could do 2 jerry cans to do 2 refueling actions back to back. How does this go? Let's say I'm going to do 1, so I pay my 1 can, and then I take my truck, and I tip it towards its front to start refilling for sand, the fuel. My opponent takes all of the dice, and with a single hand, they start rolling these as quickly as they can. Every time they get a flame, that can be set aside. They continue rolling until everything's aflame, and as soon as that happens, they say stop, and I'm done refueling, okay? On the very last die, by the way, if you're not getting that flame, you will automatically get it because by the 5th roll, if you have a single die that's not a flame, we assume it is a flame. So it will happen. So there you go. That's refueling. And then you take the rest of your turn normally. Besides that, you are going to, if you earn one of these cans on a tile, on a die, you take the corresponding tile. So you can do that. The specific dice are going to have more of some resources, as seen here. There's even a face on the blue die there that lets you deploy someone automatically. And you also have these tokens here, Tuareg tokens they're called. And these are going to be special actions, such as this one here that's you play on your opponent's turn. When they're going to refuel, they only get to refuel with 5 white dice, meaning I'm likely to get flames faster. You have this one that you can cash in for any 2 resources when you are trying to earn cards or locations. You have this one that lets you spend 2 jerry cans and remove one of your opponent's control tokens from the locations. They get the cans, however. And there's a few others. So this one, for example, a very powerful one, lets you ignore the flames, which you normally cannot re-roll, and you can re-roll them if you played this before you start rolling. So those are going to allow you to change and manipulate some of the rules in the game. That's largely it. As I said, you are scoring for cards and locations. Everything else is helping you supplement that or helping you make a way into that. That should give you an idea of how the whole thing goes. Manage your time, refuel when you must, try not to run out of sand, because if you do run out of fuel, sand, then you don't get your dice. Whatever you rolled does not go off for you, and you instead get an emergency refueling using only the 5 white dice that your opponent is rolling against you, okay? So don't do that. But other than that, pretty straightforward. So that should give you an idea again of how it all works together. Let's go back up top. Let me tell you what I think of it. That is the game. So let me tell you a little bit more about my thoughts on it. We're going to start with thematic ties. I love post-apocalyptic themes. I think this game manages to personify that and put you in that world really, really well. I love the idea that you are focusing everything you are doing around your managing your fuel. You're going out there in your war rig, if you would, and you are managing to gather different cards, managing to send your people to different locations and control those locations, but it all comes back to burning through your fuel and managing that and refueling quickly before these marauders show up, which is what your opponent is doing, rolling those dice. I love the theme in this one. Aesthetics, component quality, artwork, all of that. It is phenomenal. I love the artwork. It's Kero's artwork here, and I love his illustrations. This is no exception to that. And seeing a post-apocalyptic game illustrated by him also is quite a treat. And then the components are just great. The dice are very nice, though they are screen printed. I do worry about long-term them wearing off. I haven't seen any of that yet, but it's a possibility. But the cardboard tiles and tokens are all very nice. And then the trucks are incredible. They are just Large, chunky, extremely well molded, really a fantastic piece in the game. Replayability. Does the game give you new things to discover, from session to session? It's only 2 players, so you don't have to worry about scalability in this one. But the replayability, I think, is pretty good. I would not say it's superb, because you will see pretty much everything every play session, or most everything, like, the Tuareg tiles. Those, you're going to be very familiar with them after a single play, so you'll keep seeing them. The locations you're going to see every single one of them. Cards, you'll burn through most of the deck. So it all comes down to the combinations of those things to give you more replayability. Is the game, does it give you an interesting amount of stuff going on in the session? Yes, absolutely. Is it infinitely replayable? I don't think so. It's not one of those games that takes its replayability from seeing fresh combinations of things that were not in the previous session. So I don't think replayability is bad. I just don't think it's as deep as some games out there that give you more plays by keeping things from you from one session or the next. Game length. Is it interesting the whole time? Does it get repetitive? I think it's definitely, the scoring comes up frequently enough where fighting for the locations is interesting, and the game's about, let's say, 40 minutes or so. So you're going to score one of those locations every between 10 and 15 minutes. That's good. That gets you fighting over those locations, can keep it interesting, and you never quite know when that card is going to come up, so it's very tense, and I like that. I think the game could possibly be a little bit repetitive, though, especially if you play quite a bit. But I'm happy with with what's going on in it. I don't think it's too repetitive. I think the game length is, for the most part, very good. Ease of play. Is it fiddly? Are there a lot of extraneous rules? Is it easy to teach? I think it's a quirky game, so I think that's going to lead to a little bit of difficulty to teaching, to helping people figure out how this all works together. The idea of the truck being your fuel container, about worrying to manage that, how you refuel, how you have to do an emergency refueling sometimes if you run out of sand. There's a bit to learn, but I think the game, once you've played it, is very streamlined and everything in it does make sense. So I'm happy with that. I don't think it's too heady for what's going on in the game. And then lastly, tactics and strategy. Is it too lucky? Is it balanced? Are there interesting choices? The game is definitely, it's going to give you a lot to do. It's going to give you interesting choices. There's also luck in it. And there's probably more luck in it for a 40-45 minute game than many games out there of this style, let's say. This is a, let's call it light to mid-weight, game for 2. And most games of that ilk do not necessarily have this much dice rolling, this much luck, ultimately. That's not necessarily bad, but you need to know that going in. You will likely have turns in which you tip over your truck, you start rolling, and on that very first roll, you've got 3 flame faces showing on your dice. Those dice are dead to you now. That does mean you can probably end your turn, your run a little quicker. You can save some of that fuel, but it also, you can't help but feel that you just had a mostly dead turn. That's going to happen. Is that bad? No, I think it sort of evens out over a play, and it doesn't bother me specifically. I don't mind it, but I do have to mention that there is a sizable amount of luck in the game. Overall, I really, really enjoyed this game. It looks great. It's got a cool theme. It's got clever mechanisms that tie into what you are doing in the game. It feels fresh. The scoring is straightforward, so it doesn't get its, quote-unquote freshness from throwing confusing scoring at you. It's something I don't necessarily enjoy. But, what it manages to bring to the table is, I find, captivating. I really like this one. So this is going to get a seal of approval from me. Kero is a really neat game for 2 players. If you're looking for something that's just a little bit outside the box for 2 players, I think this is a good one. Definitely would recommend you check it out. That's it for me, folks. Thanks for checking this out with me. I'm going to see you on the next one.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com.